Welcome to the Bill Cartwright Show with our special guest, NBA college coach, ex-player, good friend, Paul Fortier. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bill.
You know, Paul, it's always interesting to me that we think we kind of know our friends well, the people we know. I know, of course. Talk about where you grew up, and I want you to talk about your mom and dad a little bit.
Okay, I grew up right in the San Francisco Bay Area, right in the Lakeview, Ingleside area, and basically mom and dad with two older brothers and with one younger sister. So I was the baby boy for a long time, and I have a younger. And grew up in the city. Enjoyed everything about it. Was in public schools all my life up until high school, and that's when my dad was basically saying that, hey, I'm not going to. My brothers went to Lincoln High School, and my father was like, and I started at Bridgemont High School, which is a small Christian school, and because he basically saying I wasn't going to go that route. I went to Aptus Middle School. Yeah, I wasn't going to go that route. So I had to go, I went to a private small Christian school. And of course, then I was playing basketball, and it was so new. We weren't even in a league. So I played 2 years there. And after my first year, I mean, it was just, I dominated and just wasn't much in we didn't play really anybody because we were trying to get into a league. Right. So I asked my dad, I said, hey, can I transfer? He was like, no, you're staying right there. Until he basically said, okay, if you want to transfer, you only can still has to be private school, and you got to do all the work. So, wow. So I started looking at a few schools, and I was going to games, and a lot of them were basically the Catholic League, which was Reardon, St. Ignatius, and Sacred Heart, the local schools there. So I ended up going to St. Ignatius, SI. And that's where I finished my high school career.
So what decided, what put St. Ignatius over?
A lot of people thought probably I was going to go to Sacred Heart. Reardon kind of, that one didn't do it for me. It was weird because I was taking a driver's training class, and we were in the simulator, and the teacher was somebody that worked at Sacred Heart. And he's one of the coaches. So he was like, he knew I was looking for a school. So he brought me all this Sacred Heart stuff, information. Of course, I knew a lot of the players because I played for St. Michael's kind of when I was in grammar school. So, and I knew the St. Ignatius guys, and those were guys from my neighborhood. But of course, they went to Lincoln, they went to public schools, and some went to Catholic schools. So I just kept watching basketball, kept going to games. And I just said, I really like what I was seeing from SI. So kind of thought I liked the coach, didn't talk to really anybody. So I went and met the admissions director, and I had to go through all that process. My dad made me do it all by myself, and he backed it at the end.
Well, talk about your time over at St. Ignatius, and who was the coach over there?
The coach there was at the time was Coach Drucker. And, he had been there for a while before I got there, and he had been very successful. And I just liked the program. And then I think he knew of me. Of course, he knew of me, he heard about me. And then all of a sudden I pop up, and but there was no talking in between before, especially in today's times. People would have thought recruiting, but the rules, they didn't have the rules in. They were just trying to bring it in for a transfer. I would have to sit out, but I didn't, because I didn't move, but I didn't have to sit out. So I was able to play right away my junior and senior year. Had a very good junior year. We went to the TOC. That's right before they changed it to the, Cal championship. So it was still TOC. And, we beat Manual Arts at that time, which was #1 ranked team in the state. So it was that was the first time we won the CCS championship, and we won that, and probably one of the best teams in Coach Drucker's history.
So talk about your senior year.
Senior year, little bit, I guess you want to say, I let down. We lost in the CCS playoffs, so we didn't win it again. We lost to Jefferson, tough loss. But overall, good year. We had my first year at SI, my junior year, we really had experienced guys as far as that were in that senior class. Another player, Jeff Tilgen, that ended up going to Cal Berkeley. And, then of course, my class and the class under me, we were good. We just stubbed our foot. It was at the wrong time, but had a good overall senior year.
So you're about to leave school. You can touch a little bit on the USF subject, which is still sort of me, but talk about how did you make a decision of what college you were going to go to?
Well, I was recruited by, basically all the West Coast schools, as well as a couple East. And I think I knew I was staying pretty close to home. So, and the visits I took were like Washington, Oregon. I went to Cal because, of course, my teammate ahead of me was there. And of course, I went to USF. And I went to Pepperdine. Those were my visits. So I really liked Pepperdine. Coach Herrick was there at the time. And I liked Washington. And I liked USF. And I just had a big bond between me and my family. We were really close. And in the end, I just said, hey, and then the history of what USF had done, at that time, there was no, as far as leagues and high major and anything, nobody had really TV contracts or anything like that. So it was just, USF just had, the history was just unbelievable, with yourself. And then even just before, and they were really, they'd done well just before I got there as well. So Coach Pete Berry was a coach at the time, and I called him up and said, hey, I want to go to USF, and I committed and signed at USF.
Okay, you could say what happened after that.
Well, it was weird. It was it was the summer. I'm working my summer job, and I get called in, and they tell me, hey, Father Losiavo, who was the president at the time, just shut down the basketball program. I'm like, wow. So all of a sudden, this is middle of June, and I'm back like on the market. And we had, I think, one of about the top 15 recruiting classes in the country. So we're talking about 4 top players that are available. And of course, at that time, we could go anywhere and without having to sit out. So I basically got recruited all over again. And it went for myself, it went real fast because my second choice was Washington. And I just said, hey, I called the coaches up there. I didn't even look to see who they signed. I didn't look to see who was on the roster as far as my position or anything. I didn't even know if they had a scholarship. I called the coach. I said, I don't know if you heard about USF, but I want to go to Washington. They were like, oh, hey, we'll get it done. So everybody thought I was going to Cal because of, my teammate. And of course I went there on a trip and everything, and they thought I wanted to stay home, but yeah. So I didn't go through the process, but because I had calls from everywhere. I got recruited even a little harder the second time around. I guess,
I bet.
Yeah, 6'8" kid, still, free in June. A lot of schools probably have some open vacancies.
So talk about Washington when you got there. Who was there, and talk about your coach?
Yeah, Marv Harshman, Hall of Fame coach, and my team went on a visit there. So I was introduced to certain guys, but I didn't know the class coming in or anything. And I just get there. I got there late compared to everybody else. And, but it turned out to be pretty good. I ended up playing with Detlef Schrempf, was a teammate of mine, and then Chris Velp. So basically kind of played with 2 first rounders.
Yeah.
And I went to the tournament 3 out of my 4 years, won a couple Pac-10 championships, and it turned out to be a really great college career.
Talk about, what did you feel like you got better at? What did you work on to develop when you were there?
Well, the biggest thing for myself was strength. I came out about 6'8" and 190 pounds. So I was pretty thin.
Yeah, that's thin.
Yeah. So the biggest thing was, getting above 200 pounds. I remember the guys when I went to bench press, and they're starting on 135, and I couldn't even touch 135. So it's like taking the 45s off, the 35, no, the 25s. Yeah, I'll put the 25. So that's basically 95 pounds, and that's what I was starting at. So it made me work, and I said, hey, I can't. I know what my teammates were thinking. They're like, this is supposed to be some big time recruit from California, and he can't even bench press 100 pounds. So I put myself in that weight room all the time, even when the team wasn't supposed to be in there. I was in there, and I remember going in there one time, and they're like, oh, it's Paul. Let's take those 45s off. I said, no, you keep those on. And I put that 135 up a few times and everything, and made me feel good. And then that brought the confidence on. I was a freshman that started to play limited, and then by the January mid-season, I was starting. And just got confidence, got stronger, really worked on, my face-up game. And then being able to go against Detlef every day, we battled and we fought, and we played all the time, even outside of practice. But, and those were the things I didn't know I was going to get from college.
Awesome. So now you're graduating, but great time in Washington. So what are you thinking? Are you thinking draft? Are you thinking, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I was thinking draft, and, wanted to play pro ball. And so went that route, had a couple those all-star games there at the time, being a senior. And then after that, waiting for the true draft. At that time they had 7 rounds. I was a 5th round draft pick and got picked up by the Washington Bullets at that time. But in that class, I think they had like 3 first rounders too, in that. And so I basically go into camp, and it just, they talk to you and everything. They say, hey, I think maybe you should go to Europe. And that's something my agent and I looked at and talked about, and said, hey, it's probably kind of like college again. You got to get stronger. You've got to get mature and everything. So that's the route we went. We said, I thought I was going to go to Europe for 1 year and come back and be in the league.
Okay, so talk about that. Talk about going to Europe. And what was that like? Because a lot of guys can't do it, as you know.
No, that's for sure. And I totally understand that. And getting there my first year, I said, you know what, I'm going to stay. And Bill, it didn't work out my first time. I go to a team in Paris, and they were like, they heard of me. I was a senior, first team, all Pac-10 player. So, and we're not talking about much money or anything. And I get there, and they're like, well, hey, we want to see you play. Well, our team's not practicing right now or whatever. We want to see you play in a game. I said, okay. So they call up another team that's this team from Le Mans. And he said, hey, can he play on your team against somebody else? And that's what they threw me out there to play. So I'm up here playing on another team that they had their Americans that are, trying to make it on that team. And I was maybe 2 days off the airplane. So I go in there, and, I'm a pretty unselfish player. So I'm just going in there and just playing my game and trying to figure out, I've never played with these guys or anything. And these guys have already practiced a number of times, and that's what it was. So I see after the game, I see the vice president, general manager, and all talking. And I see him just throwing his hands up and everything. They talk with their hands and everything. And I saw that. I said, I don't know if this is going well. So they tell me, then the guy that speaks more English comes up, well, so I kind of knew what he was about to say. He said, well, we thought you score more. We thought you'd be more aggressive offensively, and we're not going to take you. So I'm like, okay. So I call my agent. I'm like, hey, just get me on a plane back to the States. He's like, oh, wait. There's another team about an hour and 10 minutes from Paris north, and they're interested in you. And I think, we'll drive up there. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. This experience, I'm like, how can I get off a plane and go to another team that I don't even know? And they've been practicing, and they throw me in there, and that's what they expect me to be the player that they want. So I remember going on the Champs-Élysées, and I called my dad, and I'm like, Dad, I don't know if I can do this European stuff. I mean, I haven't even practiced with the team I was supposed to come over here for. And they tell me they want to send me up to another team about an hour and a half from Paris. I'm ready to go home. He said, nope, you stay right there and you go to that next team. So that's what I did, Bill.
Wow. So talk about that. What you got there?
Well, once I get there and I'm going through, I don't know the autoroute city and going to city. It's not country. So I'm seeing nothing other than a highway. And I'm like, wow, this, and I was in Paris. And that was one of the things, too, that they were recruiting to say, hey, Paris wants you and you can come to Paris. And, for somebody coming from San Francisco, a big city, Paris is welcoming. So I get in the city's name was Saint-Quentin, which means Saint Quentin in English. And, being from the Bay Area, like Saint Quentin, that's a jail. So I get up to Saint-Quentin. And I'm like, wow, we're talking about a city of about 30,000 people. Excuse me, a town of 30,000 people, and nobody speaks English. But all of a sudden, there are like 3 or 4 Americans on the team that are naturalized. So there's a lot of English being spoken, and I'm like, okay, all right. So I have a practice. They want me right away. I sign. It was still on a tryout basis, a 30-day tryout basis before my contract would be guaranteed. And then anyway, it was a second division team. We finished first. We move up to the top division. And from there, 1 year turned into, I ended up playing there for 4 years. And it was, and I always tell everybody the best decision that basically my dad made me make was staying in Europe there that time after that time in Paris.
Hey, how did you learn French when you were over there? Did you take classes or did you just walk on the street there? How'd that work?
Well, I did. That was the one thing, kind of like what most guys do their first year, and which I did. And then I thought, like, I was still 1 year, and I came back and I was with the Warriors in their camp, and they invited me to vets camp. But then it's the decision you have to make because we start so much earlier in Europe than the NBA, of course. So, but that first year, I was just like basketball, go home. I did a little bit of reading, and it was a wasted year from the language standpoint, which I was upset about. But I was like, I'm not trying to learn French. I would have the TV on, and I knew the show, the American show. So I turned the volume down and just knew I've seen this one before, so I know what's going on. And it really was, I was disappointed of how I handled that first year from the language aspect. Well, when I went back my second year, I took full advantage of it. I got into a class, and I took classes, and then from there, I really got out more and really tried to talk to the people. I made every effort, and then from there, going to my third year, I was basically putting, you start to understand it first because you hear it so much. And then I started putting sentences together, and and I'm still fluent now.
Wow, impressive. So what was your first city? You said you stayed there 4 years?
Yeah, Saint-Quentin. Saint-Quentin, which is like Saint Quentin. Yeah.
Saint Quentin, yeah. You definitely remember that.
Yeah.
So after those 4 years, what are you thinking? Are you...
after talking to other Americans and seeing how other Americans were going, at the time I was playing, when I started playing, guys like Marcus Johnson were on the end, and they were coming over to Europe to just to finish, came on their name and everything, and signed big contracts. So I got to play against guys like that. Daryl Dawkins, I played against Daryl Dawkins, basically guys that are on there in the career. So I'm like, everything started moving up too from a salary standpoint because NBA guys were coming over late in their career. So I've talked to a few Americans, and they're like, hey, this is my NBA. And, after 2 or 3 years, and I'm like, this is not that bad. And I see everything going up. I see the basketball level going up. I played against Parker's 8 years old, and I'm seeing all the French players, that these guys were Boris Diaw. All these guys were on the same team. and they called them espoirs, youthful, hopeful youthful. And I'm like, yeah, these guys, the level was just getting so much better. So I said, let's see how long I can keep playing. And I enjoyed it. And it's being able to speak the language now, and then all of a sudden having my last name, everybody started to think I was French.
So how many different teams did you play for in Europe?
Well, in Europe, I played as far as country-wise. I went from France, then I went to Italy. And that's where I played against Dawkins. And then I went back to France, and then went to Spain, and then Greece. So I played in 4 different countries. In that, in Spain, I played for 3 teams. In Greece, I played for 1 team. In Italy, I played for 1 team. And then in France, I played for about 4 different teams.
What teams were the most fun, and which team did you have the most success?
Well, I guess success and most fun they're tied together. So it's probably Cholet. Cholet is basically kind of the team that Rudy Gobert played at as a youthful kid. That's where they brought in a number of NBA players from the team of Cholet, and there we won championships. We went to cups. We won the French Cup, which is pretty big, and I was there for 3 years. So that was probably from a team standpoint, yeah.
So what was your last year in Europe? And tell me what your thoughts were about your plan for your next step.
Last year was 2000. And it really started before that. My career was over, brought my family back. My kids started school in the States. And then from there, somebody got hurt midway through the season. So that's where I went to Greece for like 3 months. And then I finished in Spain. And then after that, because I was just myself going over there, because it was just a short period of time, that first 3-month contract. And then, of course, I got in shape and everything. And I'm like, well, hey, let me finish this out in Spain. And that's what I did. But it started before that. And after playing about 12, 13 years, I was starting to, mentor the new Americans coming over. And I was with a coach that started to ask me about who I want to play with, because at that time you were allowed to play with 2 Americans. And so I was a part of the recruiting process. Hey, do you want to play with this guy, that? And so I was involved in that. Then he started asking me, picking my brain about what do you think we should run, different situations, offensively, defensively. And that's when the coaching kind of riled up in me. And then at the same time, talking to the new Americans and trying to help them out, sending them here or there when they needed something, as far as they want to find something, maybe American, because I remember somebody doing that for myself. And that's when I said, hey, I want to get involved in coaching.
So talk about that. How did you do that? What were you thinking? Did you know what level?
No, well, I was thinking college level. And I basically I talked to a lot of people that had played a couple years and that are already there. They didn't play as long as myself. So, they got into it earlier. So that was I'm like, man, I put 17 years in. So, but I'm willing to do anything. So I just started working camps. I worked Stanford camp. I worked anybody's college camp. I worked Washington's camp. So I was just working a lot of camps. And then when I worked the Stanford camp, a friend of mine, I got to, the other coaches, counselors, and this was after I went back to Washington and helped out 1 year. My first year back, I was just kind of helping out, and I was really close to graduating. So I finished, and then I'm like on the court manager. So I worked Stanford camp the next summer because there wasn't a position there at Washington. And a guy said, hey, a friend of mine is looking for a position, looking for an assistant coach. And this is in the Ivy League at Cornell. So I said, well, yeah, let's talk. So I spoke to him, Steve Donahue. And with that, and I was going out to Vegas, that's where all the tournaments were. So I was just going out there to shake hands and talk to coaches. And well, Coach Donahue wasn't going out there. His wife was pregnant, so he wasn't going out there, but his assistant coach was. He said, well, why don't you two meet? So we met out there, we talked, and I guess, of course, he went back to Coach Donahue and told him what he felt. So he offered me the job. And I'm like, hey, assistant coach, second year, basically back in the States. I thought it was going the right way. So the thing I didn't know, the third assistant in the Ivy League is unpaid. And no benefits or anything. But I found that I said, Coach Donahue, it's not a problem. Believe me, I want to get into it. Because normally those jobs are for guys that are just coming out. So I had to think like that. I said, hey, I think like I'm just coming out. I'm willing to do whatever. So I'm doing video and doing video exchange, everything. But I thought at the same time, it was really good for me to really learn that process on the ground floor.
Yeah. So talk about that. So what did that take you? Where did that take you?
It took me to, I was there for 2 years. I got bumped up after the first year. So I finally started to get paid, got bumped up.
That's
and
nice.
He was in, I think, year 4, year 5, turning the program around at Cornell. We were getting better, had success. It was recruiting. The recruiting standpoint was from, it was national recruiting because it was an Ivy League school. So we did well, and all of a sudden, a position opened up at my alma mater at the University of Washington. And at the same time, I was looking, another school was coming after me too. So I got the job there at Washington there with Lorenzo Romar, and I went back to my alma mater.
So what was that like? Well, bigger school.
Bigger school.
What was that like?
It was great. It was bigger school for sure. As you know, the talent, high level of talent. And it was my alma mater, so it was great to be back there, and the opportunity to coach. We had some great success. We had, all of a sudden I'm coming back on campus, and Brandon Roy's there in his sophomore year.
Wow.
So little different.
Nice
there.
talent.
Yeah. So we had, and we got a number, from Isaiah Thomas to John Brockman, Spencer Halls, a number of good players. Terrence Ross and CJ Wilcox, a number of guys, Quincy Pondexter. So it was a great, I was there for 8 years. We went to Sweet 16s. We were right there to go to Elite 8, lost an overtime game, won a number of championships. But at the same time, Cornell wins 3 championships. They go to 2 Sweet 16s. They go to the Sweet 16 too. And that's unheard of at for an Ivy League school.
Yes.
But we're there in Syracuse. We're playing West Virginia. Cornell's playing Kentucky. So I have an opportunity. If we win, they win. I'll be playing a school that and the guy that I worked for in the Elite 8. So it was kind of cool.
So you're about to leave Washington. I know coaching it's tough for one thing to get with a good school, a good team, right spot. So what are you thinking after Washington?
I finally come back to California and go to Cal Poly. So I had an opportunity to stay in the Pac-10, and I won't mention the school, but I didn't go. I just felt a better feeling at Cal Poly, and that's what I did. Some people thought I was crazy, but I ended up going to Cal Poly, and we ended up going to the NCAA tournament, first time in school history. Ended up coaching a player down there that's now in the NBA, David Nwaba. And it was good. And I was happy to kind of be back in California, not far, right between San Francisco and LA, and to recruit back at the mid-major level. And from there, somebody who I worked with at Cornell went to Army and got the Drexel job. And so, of course, you stay in touch with guys you work with. And he got the position there, so I was happy for him. And he said, "Hey, you want to come back?" I'm like, I thought he was joking. And I checked out Drexel. I checked, Philadelphia. I was like, no, they've had some success. I said, hey, let's do this. Let's get this thing going again. And that's where I still am. I'm here at Drexel now.
So talk about does different schools, because of the academics, do they really have an advantage to get those kids in?
Well, yes, there's an advantage there, but sometimes it works against you too because your pool is different. So you have other schools maybe in your conference that the academic level is maybe not as high, and then of course some of the players they can recruit you can't. But we said when I was in the Pac-12, it was Stanford. I said, but man, the kid we would go against Stanford, it's like we didn't have a shot because that kid, hey, he was a good academic kid. He's going to Stanford, and that's they won 9 out of 10 if you were going against Stanford. So they have their pool, and of course we have our pool. And sometimes when you're at the stronger academic institution, the pool may not be as, is not be as big.
Since you've been in, because the NBA, of course, has changed to where I don't know what we're running, but I know there's no post ups and there's no intent of throwing the ball in down there. Has that really changed? Or has it always been that way in college since you've been there?
No, it's changed. Analytics has taken over a lot, and I think that's at all levels. And this all the time. Somebody at 5 say, "No, don't say 5 man." Nobody wants to be a 5.
No, there's no 5. There's no point guard either.
True. So
you got 3 guys running around out there.
Right. So you can always say multiple guards and everything. So we're like, but the guy is really a 5. Yes, he is. But so because everybody wants to be a ball handler and bring it up and everything. So
everybody,
yeah. So I mean, who wants to go down and back to the basket and then the thing about it is the other part is throwing the ball into the post, which is a lost art.
Definitely lost.
Yeah. So you have that part. And when we get somebody down there to post, or sometimes we get a bigger, one of our bigger wings, we're like, man, we can't get somebody to throw it to them. So, we really do a good job of working on those things in our program. But, there are sometimes when it's this mismatch, I'm like, well, don't worry, just kind of fake front. They're not going to throw it in. They're not going to be able to throw it in. So if you put some ball pressure on them, they can't throw it in, and they're looking to reverse the ball.
Yeah, but it is interesting. Some teams, I watch, some teams do throw it in there.
Oh, yes.
Gonzaga will throw it in there for sure. Yeah. Michigan, Patrick will throw it in there.
Yeah.
He better throw it in there.
Right.
So
no, you do. That's the thing too, Bill. The teams that do that, like Kansas working, they're going to go high-low.
Right.
Teams that's what they do. And of course they work on it. But other teams that so you're hearing they're recruiting a certain player. I'm like, this guy doesn't fit there. So, but the team you're going to play, and hey, these guys here, they work on it, and they're going to get it inside.
Yeah, it is really amazing. I am curious though, is that because I'm a big oddity guy. So considering Syracuse, Boeheim, how come more teams don't play zone? Why don't they just play zone? This guy's been a zone for 30 years.
That is a good question. And I've talked to some people close to their program. And when you think about it too, when what he says is from the scouting standpoint, but it's funny because you see teams that go to a zone, and as soon as they hit a 3 or something, they go out into a man. And I always say, well, what about if you stayed in man and they hit the 3? What would you do then? You stay in man, right? So
exactly,
stay in it for a little bit, and see, you can't go right off. But I think it's just basically being comfortable with it. And I think just like Coach Boeheim is very comfortable with it. Teams that do zone, or if they do 75% zone, they're very comfortable with it. But most teams are 80 to 90% man, and that's what they're going to live and die with. So if they do play that little bit of zone and then all of a sudden somebody hits a couple of jumpers, they're out of it quick.
Talk about some guys that I don't know that I should be looking at next year who are going to be like, I don't say superstars, but they're going to be really good.
For what level? The pro level or the college level?
They're not college.
That's a tough question for myself. Other than the main guys, but I just always like seeing the guys that it's like recruiting, and that's what I've always been really looked at as far as seeing guys that that aren't that 5-star, even at Washington. Yeah, we could get some 5-star players, but that 3-star, 2-star that nobody really knew about and recruited, and he really turned into be a really good player. I mean, everybody thought for example, Justin Holiday. Everybody thought we were recruiting Justin Holiday to get Drew Holiday, but we weren't. We knew Justin Holiday was a pretty good player. We were his highest offer. After that, it was like Northridge. And of course, as we know now, Justin is in the NBA as well. He wasn't the same route as Drew. Drew was one and done and a first rounder. Justin didn't get drafted and went via 4 years, Europe and the G League. So it's just guys like that. I just think, where you can kind of find those players in the back gym or something like that. But now they're making it tough because they're making all the tournaments in one venue, which is great. And they put 18 courts out in one building. So it's great where you can go left and right and to this court, to that court, but everybody else is still in there and they have their eyes on everybody. So where before, a lot of times you got to go way up there to this gym about 50 minutes out. And we knew the big boys, the big coaches weren't going out there. So that's where you can find some players.
Talk about that transport portal. We got 3 starters out of that this year, and we're 15 and 2 right now. So we knew something could happen with that portal. Talk about that.
You guys are doing well with that portal. The portal, not just the portal, and then of course the one-time transfer rule where you don't have to sit out.
Right.
So of course that just it got overloaded last year, and it's going to happen again. And that goes from guys basically going to the wrong school the first time around. They're going too high, and it finally sets in that, hey, I made a mistake, but hey, I know I can transfer. So we look at it. We've got some transfer kids. We have some kids that are graduate transfers, as well as kids that still had eligibility left. So we got to look at it. We still recruit high school guys, where there's some teams that won't even recruit high school anymore. They're just going to recruit the portal because, hey, they're like, hey, this kid's he's been in a program, been in the college program, so he's going to be a little bit older, a little bit stronger, and he's going to understand a little bit more from college basketball.
Yeah, you got to know that, I'll take a couple of freshmen, but I can get some seasoned players in already. We're already 20 years old. And physically they're ready to rock and roll. So, wow, that's going to be big. Now, do you think that's going to have some parity now that there's no more of these super teams every year?
I think you're getting that already, and you see it by the big names. The big 5 are getting beat by mid-majors. One is, as you know, as you get older and you get in a program, you all of a sudden your team is 3-4 years old. I mean, Drexel ourselves, we won it last year. We go to the tournament for the first time in 25 years, and we were old, and
right.
We could beat a lot of experienced teams. So, and I think that's where the parity comes in, where I know guys are coming in as 5-star players, but they're still coming out of high school and they're still young. They don't fully understand they're talented, but when you have, as we know, some schools may have 5 of those guys like that, it's tough to put together, piece all that together.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. I still remember when Zion came out, first pick of the draft, they had 3 first-round draft picks, and then they didn't make the Final Four.
Right.
Like, what the heck is going on over there?
Exactly. Yeah.
That is really, really remarkable.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul, talk about your family.
Family's good. 2 daughters. They're both in the Northwest area, and they're getting older and they're on their own. And
that's right. Those kids are getting older, but we're not.
Yeah, exactly. We're not getting older. Yeah, and so, but no, they're all doing good. The wife and the daughters are doing well. So we're just trying to kind of see which way this basketball keeps going. And but I've been enjoying it out here in Philadelphia. It's been good.
So I already know you know, like all assistant coaches, so I can say that, or 99% of them, you want to be a head coach somewhere.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking? I mean, how does that process work anymore? I have no idea. Do you need to know the AD? Do you need the agent? Do you need what do you got to do?
Yeah, you have the agent aspect, and I've been in a group where we've gone to where you meet a lot of different ADs, and they have something what they call speed dating, and then you get your time in front of them. So of course if you get that opportunity again, and hey, it always helps that somebody knows you or something. But the biggest thing is that I tell my head coach, he's been a great help and everything. The program has to win. The program has to win, and I win that media conference day. And then for them to win that, they're going to hire somebody that came from a good program or has been very successful. So, I said for Drexel this last year, that was the first time we've been to the tournament. We've gotten better every year. So we just have to you have to keep going. I mean, now our guys, we went to the tournament. We lost in the first round. And after seeing like other mid-majors, Oral Roberts went far, other mid-majors gone far, and that's where that parity is. They want to go back and they want to win some games. And I think if our head coach, he does well, everybody in the program does well, and it comes down to the assistants as well.
Yeah, I know the tournament's tough. We had great teams at USF. We did poorly in the tournament, and normally because some guy you never heard of, some broke guy, maybe the ninth man has his career game against you, probably in his whole life. But it's a nightmare. So winning in the NCAA is really, really special.
It is.
Hey, Paul, thank you so much for being on. We've got to now this pandemic's ending, we gotta spend some time together. And Terry basically retired from the golf course, but we gotta get you back on there.
Yeah, you're right. I need to get back out there with you guys there, and I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill.